So welcome back. We are talking about the androecium, that is a male sex organ of the flower. So we had talked about the structure of anther and what is a microsporogenesis. Now we have to discuss about the pollen grain. So pollen grain is also called as a male gametophyte. It is also called as male gametophyte, and it is usually spherical in nature. It is usually spherical or round shape, and the size of the pollen grain is usually the size of the pollen grain is usually 25 to 50 micrometer in diameter. 25 to 50 micrometer in diameter. Cytoplasm is surrounded by plasma membrane. This is the cytoplasm, and the cytoplasm is surrounded by plasma membrane. So this is the plasma membrane, and cytoplasm is surrounded by plasma membrane. So here a pollen grain has mainly two layers. One is a outer layer known as the exine. So this one. So this is known as the outer layer known as the exine, and this one is the inner layer known as the intine. Very important. So here some gaps are we observe some gaps. These gaps are nothing but this is known as the aperture. This aperture is known as the germopore, where this exine is absent. Exine is absent at the gaps, and that is known as the germopore. So exine is made up of sporopollenin. Exine is made up of sporopollenin, whereas intine is made up of cellulose and pectose. So here the hard outer layer, this is the hard substance. So this outer layer is made up of sporopollenin, and that is usually called as exine, and it can withstand high temperature and humidity. This sporopollenin, which can withstand high temperature and humidity, is high temperature as well as humidity, strong acids, alkali, etc. So far no enzyme can degrade the sporopollenin. So this is a very hardest substance. So exine has aperture. So these apertures are called as germopores, where the sporopollenin is absent. Very important. Sporopollenin is absent at the regions of germopores. Wherever the aperture is present or germpore is present, at that region sporopollenin is absent, right? So here pollen grains are preserved as fossils due to the presence of sporopollenin. So these pollen grains can be preserved as fossils due to the presence of sporopollenin, which is the hardest substance. No enzyme can degrade the sporopollenin. So exine exhibits some different types of patterns and designs. If you observe this pollen grain, so this is a smooth pattern, and if you observe another plant pollen grain, so you may observe some patterns like spherical or helicals. So different, and some can like projections, spikes, etc. So we observe different types of patterns in the exine, right? Next, intine is the inner wall. Inner wall is made up is known as the intine, and it is made up of cellulose and pectin. Right? So this is the structure of matured pollen grain. So we had talked about the how this matured pollen grain is developed. So from the microspore mother cell, initially a haploid microspores are formed. 4 haploid microspores are formed, and all are potential, and that is a unmatured pollen grain, and this unmatured pollen grain undergoes mitosis division to form a matured pollen grain, which contains the vegetative cell and generative cell, two-celled stage. So in most of the flowering plants, angiosperms shed at two-celled stage. Angiosperms shed at two-celled stage. That is one vegetative cell and one generative cell. One vegetative cell and one generative cell. In remaining 40% flowering plants, pollen grain shed at three-celled stage. That is one vegetative cell and two male gametes. The generative cell undergoes mitosis division to produce the two male gametes. So this is the matured pollen grain. In the matured pollen grain, vegetative cell is also known as the tube cell. Vegetative cell is also known as the another name for vegetative cell is the tube cell, and another cell is the generative cell. So this vegetative cell is bigger. It is a bigger and has a abundant food reserves. Abundant food reserves are present in this vegetative cell, and here it is the nucleus is irregular. The shape of the nucleus of vegetative cell is irregular. So irregular shape of nucleus, and generative cell is this one is the generative cell, and this generative cell is smaller in nature, and it floats in the cytoplasm of vegetative cell. Very important. So this generative cell floats in the cytoplasm of vegetative cell, and the shape of the nucleus is usually spindle shaped nucleus. So the spindle shape may be like this spindle shape nucleus, right? Whereas vegetative cell nucleus is a irregular shaped nucleus. So here dense cytoplasm is present, and this nucleus is a spindle shaped nucleus. Nucleus is a spindle shaped nucleus. So remember, very important, at the germopore regions, sporopollen is absent. And another important question in the examination point of view is 60% of angiosperms shed their pollen grains at two-celled stage, that is vegetative cell, generative cell, and remaining 40% of angiosperms, the generative cell divides mitotically to gives rise to two male gametes. Thus, pollen grains are shed at three-celled stage. It is a neat PYQ question. Then, so when the pollen grains, that is the shed pollen grains land on the stigma, when the pollen grains land on the stigma before they lost viability. The viability period of pollen grains, very important. Viability period. The viability period of pollen grains vary from plant to plant. If you take that wheat, in the wheat plant, rice, wheat and rice, the viability is only wheat and rice, the viability is only 30 minutes. Within the 30 minutes, the pollen grain must land on the stigma. Otherwise, it lost its viability. So this viability period mainly depends on temperature and humidity. It is also important. That viability period is depend on temperature and humidity. So viability period in wheat and rice is 30 minutes. Whereas in some members of Leguminosae, Solanaceae and Rosaceae, so they can viable for months. The pollen grains of Leguminosae, Solanaceae, Rosaceae, so they have viability for some months, more than 3 months. Okay. And another importance of pollen grains is they are rich in nutrients. Pollen grains are rich in nutrients. In European or some Western countries, they used as food supplements. They take this nutrient in the form of tablets and syrups. Okay, so instead of breakfast, so we can consume this pollen syrups and tablets, and These are rich in nutrients. Pollen tablets are used as food supplements. So pollen tablets and syrups increase the performance of athletes. Very important. It increases the performance of athletes as well as race horses. Race horses. So pollen grains increase the performance of athletes and race horses. And most important thing is the pollen grains can be preserved for years. They can stored for years. Pollen grains can stored for years at minus 196 degrees temperature, and the chemical used is a liquid nitrogen, and the technique is known as the cryopreservation. Remember, very important. So this term is not mentioned in the NCERT, but we have to learn the term cryopreservation. So pollen grains are stored for years in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees temperature, right? And that technique is known as the cryopreservation, and the chemical is a liquid nitrogen. Very important. Cryopreservation, minus 196 degrees temperature, and liquid nitrogen. So pollen grains of some plants can cause allergies. Allergic for some people, it leads to chronic respiratory disorders like asthma and bronchitis. So they also cause diseases like asthma, respiratory disease like asthma, bronchitis. These are the chronic respiratory disorders, long-lasting disorders. Okay. So this is about the structure of pollen grain. So in the whole androecium, we need to remember this pollen grain is very, very important. They are shed at which stage? In most of the flowering plants, they shed at 2-cell stage, and viability period. You have to remember the viability period of the pollen grains. That is, if you take wheat and rice, the members of POAC usually 30 minutes, and that viability is depend on which factor? Temperature and humidity. Temperature and humidity. And in other members like Leguminaceae, Solanaceae, Rosaceae, so the viability period is for months, and they can be used as food supplements. They can be used as food supplements, and they are rich in nutrients, so they can be taken in the form of tablets and syrups. So they increase the performance of athletes and race horses, right? And the pollen grains can be stored in pollen banks. They are stored in pollen banks, and the temperature is minus 196. Chemical is a liquid nitrogen, and the method is a cryopreservation. And each pollen grain contains a vestigial cell, generative cell, and the shape of the nucleus of vestigial cell is a irregular. Shape of the nucleus of generative cell is the spindle shaped nucleus. And remember, the outer layer is known as the exine, inner layer is known as the intine. Exine is made up of sporopollenin, very hard, strongest substance. It can tolerate any type of environment, so that can be used as fossils. And intine is made up of cellulose and pectose. So here some gaps are present. Those gaps are called as germopores, where the sporopollenin is absent. So when this pollen grain land on the stigma, so through this germopore, it initiates the germination. That is, pollen tube is formed along with the that cellulose and pectin involved in the germination process. Right. So this is about the pollen grain. Now let us discuss about the important questions from the flower and pre-fertilization structure, that is from androecium. So here flowers are embryological marvels and morphological marvels, and the third option is the both 1 and 2, and fourth none of this. So here flowers are the embryological marvels and as well as morphological marvels. So flowers are embryological marvels, morphological marvels, both 1 and 2, and now this. So flowers are both embryological marvels as well as morphological marvels. So here sexual reproduction, in the sexual reproduction, After fertilization, zygote will be formed, and from the zygote, embryo is formed. So here, the formation of embryo is related to sexual reproduction. So morphological marvels, flowers are visible. That is a external feature. So that is why this for the first question, third answer will be the right answer. In angiosperms, the site of sexual reproduction. So usually the site of sexual reproduction is the flower. Androecium and gynoecium are present in the flower. So male and female reproductive structures of the angiosperms are male and female reproductive structures of the angiosperms are. So here male structure is the androecium, female structure is the gynoecium, and the unit of the androecium is the stamen, and the unit of the gynoecium is the carpel or pistil. So here respectively male and female reproductive structures of the angiosperms. So male, so first option carpel, second option pistil respectively. No. So first here male means stamen. So here second option pistil and stamen respectively. No. And male is androecium, female is gynoecium. No, this third is also no. And the fourth option, so male reproductive structure is the androecium and female reproductive structure is the gynoecium. So fourth answer will be the right answer. Fourth answer will be the right answer. And plants flower and fruit only once in their lifetime and die after fruiting are. So plants flower and fruit only once in their lifetime and die after fruiting are called. So monocarpic plants, polycarpic plants, vegetative plants, sterile plants. That is monocarpic plants. Monocarpic plant means plants flower and fruit only once in their lifetime and die after fruiting. That is monocarpic. Polycarpic means so plants can flower and fruit annually, right? For examples, mango, sweet lime, etc. Right? They can live for almost 25 to 30. If you take sweet lime, 25 to 30 years it can produce flower and fruits. Okay. And next question is a flower is a highly modified and condensed reproductive shoot specifically meant for the reproduction, sexual reproduction. Next question. So male gametes or sperms are developed from generative cell by which division? Meiotic division, mitotic division, amitotic division, none of this. So male gametes or sperms developed from generative cell are divided by mitotic division. So pollen mother cell undergoes meiosis division to produce the 4 haploid microspores or pollen grains. This pollen grain, each pollen grain undergo mitosis division 1 to produce that vegetative cell as well as a generative cell. So this generative cell undergoes another mitosis division, that is mitosis 2, to produce this male gametes, to produce the male gametes. Generative cell undergo mitosis 2 produce the 2 male gametes, right? So the answer will be the mitotic division. And intine of pollen grain is made up of callose, pectocellulose, cellulose, fat like sporopollenin. So intine of pollen grain is made up of, that is both pectose and cellulose, that is why pectocellulose. So second answer will be the right answer. And exine of pollen grain is made up of, that is direct question, sporopollenin, which is the hardest substance which can withstand high temperature and which can withstand strong acids and alkali. A typical angiosperm anther is bilobed anther. The typical angiosperm anther is, if we cut the transverse section, So that is usually Dithecus anther, Dithecus, bilobed, and tetrasporangiate. Tetrasporangiate. So bilobed, Dithecus, and tetrasporangiate. This one. So third answer will be the right answer. Next question. The bilobed nature of anther is very distinct in the bilobed nature of anther is very distinct in the which section? Transverse section, longitudinal section, latitudinal section, both 1 and 2. So usually the bilobed nature of an anther is very distinct in the transverse section. Next question. Parthenium or carrot grass? Parthenium or carrot grass has become ubiquitous in occurrence and causes pollen allergy. It came to India as a contaminant with imported. So this Parthenium came to India as a contaminant with imported wheat. So when M.S. Swaminathan traveling from Mexico to India, he brought hybrid wheat varieties. So at that time, so accidentally this Parthenium came to India with the wheat varieties. Now it is expanded into the entire Asian continent. It is a weed plant, and now this plant is cosmopolitan in nature. Next question. So this Parthenium causes allergies to most of the people. That can cause respiratory disorders. So next question. The advantage of cross fertilization in plants is that is a increased genetic recombination that we are going to discuss after completion of fertilization topic. Next question. Number of gametes produced by male gametophyte of flowering plants. So in general, two male gametes are produced. And which type of pollination? So this is also we can discuss later. Next question. So which of the following statement about sporopollen is wrong? So sporopollenin statement which is wrong. That is, exine is formed of sporopollenin. Sporopollen is not degraded by any known enzyme. Sporopollen occurs in the areas of germpores only. Sporopollen is most resistant organic material. So sporopollen occurs in the area of germpores only. Remember, this is the wrong statement. Because sporopollen is absent in the germpore regions. Except the germpore regions, that sporopollen is present as the outer layer, right? So this is the intine, and this is the exine. In the exine, some gaps are present. These gaps are nothing but germpores where sporopollen is absent. Very important.